Hello everyone, Hira here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes national, international and business, economy, news. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school, a new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of let's grow together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. 1st June 2021. National important news. GDP shrinks by 7.3%. Q4 uptick moderates 2020-21 carnage, curbing new pandemic waves, lockdowns, vaccination pace hold key to recovery. Special correspondent, New Delhi. India's gross domestic product, GDP, contracted by 7.3% in 2020-21, as per provisional national income estimates released by the National Statistical Office on Monday, marginally better than the 8% contraction in the economy projected earlier. GDP growth in 2019-20, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, was 4%. The gross value added, GVA, in the economy shrank 6.2% in 2020-21, compared to a 4.1% rise in the previous year. Only two sectors bucked the trend of negative GVA growth: agriculture, forestry and fishing, which rose 3.6%, and electricity, gas, water supply and other utility services, up 1.9%. Though this is the bleakest performance on record for the economy, the fourth quarter, Q4, of 2020-21 helped moderate the damage, with a higher than expected growth of 1.6% in GDP. This marked the second quarter of positive growth after the country entered a technical recession in the first half of the year. GDP had contracted 24.4% in April to June 2020, followed by a 7.4% shrinkage in the second quarter. It had returned to positive territory in the September to December quarter with a marginal 0.5% growth. GVA for trade, hotels, transport, communication and broadcasting related services saw the sharpest decline of 18.2%, followed by construction, -8.6%, mining and quarrying, -8.5%, and manufacturing, -7.2%. Economists said these numbers would moderate growth prospects for 2021-22 through the base effect, even as the scourge of the virus is hurting activity again. With a lower contraction in GDP as well as GVA in 2020-21, the sharp recovery projected for 2021-22 by a number of agencies like the IMF at 12.5% and the RBI at 10.5% may have to be moderated, said D.K. Srivastava, Chief Policy Advisor at EY India. The combination of the second wave and the revised base effect may imply a lower GDP growth for the Indian economy for 2021-22, maybe in the range of 9-9.5%, Mr. Srivastava added. Chief Economic Advisor to the Finance Ministry K.V. Subramanian said he doesn't expect GDP forecasts to be significantly affected. Whether growth will be in double digits or single digits, there is uncertainty. Some of the scientists are talking about the possibility of a third wave too. It would be speculative to tell you exact numbers, he said, stressing that vaccination was important for the health of the people and economy. SC bats for One price for vaccines across nation. Court raises doubts on centre's deadline for total coverage. Legal correspondent, New Delhi. The government on Monday claimed it will inoculate the entire eligible population by 2021 end, only to be barraged with questions from the Supreme Court about the efficacy of its policy, which allows the centre to procure just 50% of the vaccines while leaving the states to buy their own. The court also challenged the differential vaccine pricing policy, saying, there needs to be one price for vaccines across the nation. The virtual hearing, however, began on a positive note, with Solicitor General Tushar Mehta assuring that, on vaccination, as per our estimate, from the domestic market and Sputnik V, we expect the entire eligible population to get vaccinated by the end of this year. Mr. Mehta said the government was in talks with other manufacturers like Pfizer. If the discussions succeed, the government would be able to advance its deadline for completing the immunization. He added that he would file an affidavit with the latest updates. But the court highlighted the difference in vaccine prices between the centre and the states. When the centre can purchase vaccine in bulk for 150 rupees per dose, the states have to pay 300 rupees to 600 rupees. Justice L. Nageshwar Rao, on the bench, asked why even the two vaccines, Covaxin and Covishield, were differentially priced. What is the rationale for this dual pricing policy? Why is the centre procuring at a lower price, and why has the centre fixed its vaccine purchase at 50% and left the states to their own devices? Justice Bhatt asked. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said some states and municipal corporations had gone ahead and floated their own global tenders to buy vaccines. We want to know if the policy of the country is that all states are on their own to supply tenders, he asked the centre. Bengal Chief Secretary steps down. Shiv Sahai Singh Vijayta Singh, Kolkata, Delhi. In a day of dramatic developments, West Bengal Chief Secretary Alapan Bandyopadhyay on Monday opted to retire after the state government refused to release him to the centre despite a letter from the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet. He was later appointed Chief Advisor to Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee for 3 years. Earlier in the day, Ms. Banerjee wrote a 5-page letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, urging him to rescind the order asking the Chief Secretary to report to Delhi on Monday. In the letter, she said the government of West Bengal cannot release and is not releasing its Chief Secretary. It's time to define limits of sedition. SC grants relief to 2 Telugu channels from coercive action. Krishnadas Rajagopal. The Supreme Court on Monday said, it is time to define the limits of sedition, even as it protected 2 Telugu channels from any coercive action by the Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy-led Andhra Pradesh government for their reportage of the COVID-19 pandemic in the state. A 3-judge bench led by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud flagged indiscriminate use of the sedition law against critics, journalists, social media users, activists and citizens for airing grievances about the government's COVID-19 management, or even for seeking help to gain medical access, equipment, drugs and oxygen cylinders. We are of the view that the ambit and parameters of the provisions of sections 124A, sedition, 153A and 505 of the Indian Penal Code 1860 would require interpretation, particularly in the context of the right of the electronic and print media to communicate news, information and the rights, even those that may be critical of the prevailing regime in any part of the nation, the court noted in its order. Muscling the media. This is muscling the media, Justice L. Nageshwar Rao, another judge on the bench along with Justice S. Ravindra Bhatt, said about the manner in which AP had tried to silence, channels TV5 and ABN. It is time to define the limits of sedition, Justice Chandrachud said. The court issued notice to the AP government and directed that there shall be a stay on the respondents, the state, adopting coercive proceedings against the two TV channels. Justice Chandrachud pointed out that the court had categorically told the states not to initiate penal action against the critics of COVID-19 management measures in an April 30 order. Kerala wants Lakshadweep head recalled. Special Correspondent Thiruvananthapuram. The Kerala Assembly on Monday unanimously passed a resolution demanding the recall of Lakshadweep Administrator Praful Kotla Patel and the withdrawal of the controversial orders issued by him. The House also expressed solidarity with the people of Lakshadweep who have been protesting against the decisions of Mr. Patel and seeking urgent steps to safeguard their culture and livelihood. The resolution is the first to be moved in the Assembly after the Left Democratic Front under Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan returned to power after the Assembly elections and the first of the 15th Assembly. When Height Blocks Doctors IPS Dreamojing Damon from Arunachal Pradesh was declared unfit as he fell short by 2.5 centimeters. Ojing Damon is at present an IRS officer in Kolkata. Rahul Karmakar Guwahati. Arunachal Pradesh Chief Minister Pema Khandu has asked the centre to amend a service condition that requires an eligible candidate to be of a certain height to become an IPS officer. He wrote to Union Minister for Personnel, Grievances, DUNER and Pensions Jitendra Singh seeking the amendment after the Central Administrative Tribunal, CAT, dismissed a petition by an Arunachal Pradesh doctor whose hope of becoming an IPS officer fell short by 2.5 centimeters. Ojing Damon, from Milang village in the state's Upper Siang district bordering China, was ranked 644th in the Civil Services Examination of 2017. Selected for the Indian Revenue Service, IRS, he is posted in Kolkata. Mr. Damon was placed second in the provisional list of IPS officers in the Scheduled Tribes category. But a medical examination conducted by the Central Standing Medical Board, CSMB, found him unfit for the IPS because he is 162.5 centimeters tall, which is 2.5 centimeters less than the required minimum height of 165 centimeters for male candidates for the IPS. He challenged the CSMB's decision at the CAT in August 2018. He argued that candidates belonging to the CENT category and races such as Gorkha, Assamese, Kumani, Naga, Gadwali, etc., are entitled to a relaxation of 15 centimeters in the minimum height required for the IPS. But the CAT dismissed his petition on May 27, pointing out that he did not belong to the communities eligible for height relaxation. According to Mr. Khandu, the condition on height would deprive aspirants of Arunachal Pradesh. This service condition was framed in 1951 and apparently not updated. Arunachal Pradesh came into existence as a union territory in 1972 and attained statehood in 1987. You will appreciate that when the All India Services Act was framed, the present-day Arunachal was under Assam administration, and when the benefit was extended to Assamese in the Act, the spirit would have been to include the tribes of Arunachal too, he wrote to Mr. Singh. Mr. Damon, who plans to challenge the CAT decision in a high court, said it would be unfair for a certain category of candidates who clear the exams conducted by the UPSC and medical tests only to be stumped by the height clause. This needs to be done, at least for the future generations of people in Arunachal Pradesh and others places who are not tall enough, he said. Aggressive nature of pandemic's second wave handled effectively, third, fourth waves predicted between September and December. Expert Mohammad Iqbal. The state-level core team on COVID-19 management and care in Rajasthan has effectively handled the aggressive nature of second wave of pandemic by managing the younger and pediatric population. But the adolescents, who have not been vaccinated so far, may be affected more in the subsequent waves, says Dr. Sudhir Bhandari, head of the core team and principal of Savai Man Singh Government Medical College, Jaipur. The COVID-19 pandemic has put an unprecedented load on health facilities and stretched the infrastructure in Rajasthan to its limits. How can we ensure optimum utilization of the available resources, including oxygen, and convince the people to make a judicious use of facilities available? The second wave of pandemic has been very aggressive, with more and more younger population and children being affected. Unlike the first wave, 60% to 70% of the moderate to severe patients are oxygen dependent and require critical care. To meet out this situation, we have created COVID-19 triage at our dedicated institutions, where we segregated mild or asymptomatic for home quarantine, while the mild to moderate are admitted to provide them medical support. We have also conducted sensitization programs for doctors, paramedics and public at large for early reporting, optimal use of oxygen, proning and physiotherapy. As the head of the state-level core team on COVID-19 management and care, what was your remit and how have you helped the state government in identifying the key areas where action was needed? Since the beginning of the first wave, we have been working intensely with our core team in various directions, such as building up infrastructure for COVID-19 patients, creating more oxygenated and ventilated beds, and enhancing the capacity for RT-PCR testing. We started with 0 tests at Savai Man Singh Hospital and raised to 10,000 tests per day. We are now capable of conducting more than 1 lakh RT-PCR tests a day in the entire state. Our team was the first to use hydroxychloroquine and antiviral drugs lopinavir and ritonavir in the first 3 Italian COVID-19 patients. The core team headed by me has effectively handled the aggressive nature of the pandemic's second wave by managing the younger and pediatric population. You were the first person to receive the COVID-19 vaccine dose in Rajasthan. Are there still apprehensions among the people about vaccination, and have you succeeded in sending a clear message that our indigenous vaccine is safe? I had the honor of being the first person in Rajasthan to get vaccinated. Since we were the first in many ways, such as using hydroxychloroquine and implementing the COVID management protocols, I wanted to boost the morale of the whole medical fraternity by taking the vaccine first and increase the acceptability by the public at large with the confidence that the vaccines are safe. There are reports that people are contracting infection even after getting 1 or both the doses of vaccine. Does it mean that the vaccine does not provide full protection and the people should adhere to the COVID-appropriate protocol? It is true that even after 2 doses, people are getting infection. The vaccination only protects from critical disease and ventilation, and one might still contract asymptomatic or mild infection. Therefore, the compliance with the COVID-appropriate behavior, especially wearing the face mask and maintaining distance, is a must even after vaccination. What is the likelihood of a third wave of the pandemic hitting Rajasthan and the country? As per the epidemiological studies, the third and fourth waves of the pandemic are predicted somewhere between September and December this year. They can also merge with the second wave. There is a possibility that the adolescents and children, who have not been vaccinated, may be affected more in the third wave, as the middle-aged and elderly population has been vaccinated to quite an extent. Central Vista project essential, of public importance. Delhi HC Court dismisses PIL plea against work, says COVID-19 protocols are adhered to. Clearance given. Work in progress at the site of the Central Vista project in New Delhi on Monday. Shivkumar Pushpakar. Saubham Rocky Singh, New Delhi. The Delhi High Court on Monday dismissed a petition seeking to halt the construction activities at the Central Vista Avenue redevelopment project in view of the recent surge in COVID-19 cases in the country. A bench of Chief Justice D.N. Patel and Justice Jyoti Singh remarked that there was no reason for the court to suspend the construction activities as the workers were staying at the project site, and COVID-19 protocols are adhered to and COVID-19 appropriate behavior is being followed. We are of the view that this is a motivated petition preferred by the petitioners and not a genuine public interest litigation petition, the court said while imposing a cost of 1 rupee lakh on petitioners Anya Malhotra, who works as a translator, and Sohail Hashmi, a historian and documentary filmmaker. Not an essential activity. The petitioners had argued that the project was not an essential activity and hence, it could be put on hold for now during the pandemic. The court noted that the work at the Central Vista Avenue redevelopment was part of the Central Vista project and of vital public importance, and the legality of the project had been upheld by Supreme Court. By no stretch of imagination, it can be said that Central Vista project or Central Vista Avenue redevelopment project is not an essential project, the court said, adding, if this type of project is stopped by the court, the main project cannot be completed within the stipulated time. It noted that the work at the Central Vista Avenue redevelopment project had to be completed by November 2021. While the petitioners argued that the time limit be extended, the court said, such kind of arguments cannot be accepted by this court, keeping in view that the construction activity of this essential project or of a project of national importance cannot be stopped, especially when the conditions imposed by the order of the DDMA dated 19 April 2021 are not flouted or violated. The HC remarked that several other agencies were undertaking construction projects in Delhi. It is obvious that petitioners have selectively chosen only one project which is of national importance, at a vital place where Republic Day celebrations are held in Delhi and is a part and parcel of the larger project, namely, Central Vista project, it stated. Very selective. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta had argued that the PIL raised in the case was very selective. Senior advocate Siddharth Luthra, for the petitioners, stated that his clients were only delivering a message of health and safety for the people of Delhi, and if the government could not see it, then it was a sorry reflection of its concern for the lives of the citizens. Mr. Luthra had referred to the ongoing project work as not Central Vista, rather, Central Fortress of Death, comparing it to Auschwitz. Mr. Mehta had expressed displeasure with the comparison, saying one could criticize and be venomous about it, but such terms should not be used in court. Decision soon on oxygen use for industrial purposes on April 22. Govt banned liquid oxygen supply to industry. Demand falls. The current demand for medical oxygen was down to 5,200 metric tons a day. File photo. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. The government would take a decision to lift restrictions on use of liquid oxygen for industrial purposes as soon as possible, an official said. We are talking to state governments to find out what their needs for medical oxygen are. After confirmation from them as well as the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Whatever needs to be done to revive the continuous process industries, we will do as soon as possible, said Giridhar Aramane, Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, who is the convener of the Empowered Group 4 that oversees the country's demand for medical oxygen and its logistics. The current demand for medical oxygen was down to 5,200 metric ton, a day from a peak of 8,900 metric ton last month. This was expected to drop further to 3,000 metric ton in the next 1 week. On April 22, the government issued an order banning the supply of liquid oxygen to industry in view of increased demand for medical oxygen. The Empowered Group was consulting medical professionals to assess the demand for medical oxygen for the next wave. Foreseeing scenarios. We are trying to foresee certain scenarios in consultation with experts to determine how the oxygen situation can be improved in case of any future flare-up. We are consulting medical professionals. In 2 weeks, we plan to do basic future planning. But we want to make it clear that we can't really foresee or predict what is going to happen, Mr. Aramane said. Those who are blaming the government in hindsight on O2 and other issues did not warn us to be prepared for 4 lakh cases. The worst of projections were also not for more than 1 lakh of cases a day. All these people criticizing the government should understand that such fierce form of second wave couldn't have been dealt with by any government like we did in such a short time, he added. EPFO allows withdrawal of second COVID advance. Those who availed first also eligible. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. Around 6 crore subscribers of the Employees Provident Fund Organization, EPFO, can now withdraw a second non-refundable COVID-19 advance, the Labour Ministry announced on Monday. The initial provision for special withdrawal to meet financial needs during the pandemic was introduced in March 2020. The advance will allow subscribers to withdraw money equivalent to 3 months' basic wages plus dearness allowance, or up to 75% of the amount standing to their credit in their Provident Fund account, whichever is less. Members can apply for less amounts as well. Those who have already availed the first COVID-19 advance are also free to opt for a second advance. The provision and process for withdrawal is the same for both advances. The COVID-19 advance has been a great help to the EPF members during the pandemic, especially for those having monthly wages of less than ₹1,500, said the ministry statement. As on date, EPFO has settled more than 76.31 lakh COVID-19 advance claims, thereby disbursing a total of ₹18,698.15 crore. Given the urgent need of members for financial support, especially with a mucormycosis epidemic during the second wave of the pandemic, EPFO said it would accord top priority to COVID-19 claims. EPFO is committed to settling these claims within 3 days of their receipt. For this, EPFO has deployed a system-driven auto-claim settlement process in respect of all such members whose KYC requirement is complete in all respects, said the statement. Auto mode of settlement enables EPFO to reduce the claim settlement cycle to just 3 days as against the statutory requirement to settle the claims within 20 days. Central Vista Project essential, of public importance, Delhi HC Court dismisses PIL plea against work, says COVID-19 protocols are adhered to. Clearance given. Work in progress at the site of the Central Vista project in New Delhi on Monday. Shivkumar Pushpakar, Soubham Rocky Singh, New Delhi. The Delhi High Court on Monday dismissed a petition seeking to halt the construction activities at the Central Vista Avenue redevelopment project in view of the recent surge in COVID-19 cases in the country. A bench of Chief Justice D.N. Patel and Justice Jyoti Singh remarked that there was no reason for the court to suspend the construction activities as the workers were staying at the project site, and COVID-19 protocols are adhered to and COVID-19 appropriate behavior is being followed. We are of the view that this is a motivated petition preferred by the petitioners and not a genuine public interest litigation petition, the court said while imposing a cost of 1 rupee lakh on petitioners Anya Malhotra, who works as a translator, and Sohail Hashmi, a historian and documentary filmmaker. Not an essential activity. The petitioners had argued that the project was not an essential activity and hence, it could be put on hold for now during the pandemic. The court noted that the work at the Central Vista Avenue redevelopment was part of the Central Vista project and of vital public importance and the legality of the project had been upheld by Supreme Court. By no stretch of imagination, it can be said that Central Vista project or Central Vista Avenue redevelopment project is not an essential project, the court said, adding, if this type of project is stopped by the court, the main project cannot be completed within the stipulated time. It noted that the work at the Central Vista Avenue redevelopment project had to be completed by November 2021. While the petitioners argued that the time limit be extended, the court said, such kind of arguments cannot be accepted by this court, keeping in view that the construction activity of this essential project or of a project of national importance cannot be stopped, especially when the conditions imposed by the order of the DDMA dated 19 April 2021 are not flouted or violated. The HC remarked that several other agencies were undertaking construction projects in Delhi. It is obvious that petitioners have selectively chosen only one project which is of national importance, at a vital place where Republic Day celebrations are held in Delhi and is a part and parcel of the larger project, namely, Central Vista project, it stated. Very selective. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta had argued that the PIL raised in the case was very selective. Senior advocate Siddharth Luthra, for the petitioners, stated that his clients were only delivering a message of health and safety for the people of Delhi, and if the government could not see it, then it was a sorry reflection of its concern for the lives of the citizens. Mr. Luthra had referred to the ongoing project work as not Central Vista, rather, Central Fortress of Death, comparing it to Auschwitz. Mr. Mehta had expressed displeasure with the comparison, saying one could criticize and be venomous about it, but such terms should not be used in court. Twitter has to comply with IT rules. HC The court issues notices to Union Gov and the microblogging site. Twitter claims it complied with the rules and appointed a resident grievance officer. Brendan McDermid. Staff reporter New Delhi. The Delhi High Court on Monday said Twitter has to comply with the new information technology rules for digital media if they have not been stayed by the court. Justice Rekha Pali also issued notice to the centre and Twitter on a plea by advocate Amit Acharya, seeking to appoint resident grievance officer under Rule 4 of the Information Technology, Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Ethics Code, Rules 2021. They have to follow it, rules, if it has not been stayed, the court said during the hearing. The Central Government Standing Council said Twitter has not complied with the rules, but the social media platform claimed that it has complied with them and appointed a resident grievance officer. Mr. Acharya, In his plea filed through advocates Akash Vajpayee and Manish Kumar, claimed that he wanted to raise grievance against two alleged offensive and objectionable tweets with the resident grievance officer. Details not available. However, the petitioner was unable to find the contact details of the resident grievance officer on the website of Twitter, he said. The petition said the Information Technology Rules 2021 have come into effect from 25 February 2021 and the centre had given 3 months' time to every significant social media intermediary to comply with them. Justice Mishra likely to head NHRC plea to include member from marginalized groups rejected by selection panel. The NHRC has been without a full-time head for over 5 months now. Via Twitter at India_NHRC. Sandeep Phukan, New Delhi. Former Supreme Court Justice Arun Kumar Mishra is likely to be the new chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, after a high-powered recommendation committee proposed his name on Monday, a source informed The Hindu. Former Chief Justice of the Jammu and Kashmir High Court, Mahesh Mittal Kumar, and former Director of the Intelligence Bureau, Rajiv Jain, had also been recommended by the high-powered panel as members of the NHRC, but the official notification is yet to be out until the filing of this report. The selection panel consisted of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, Harivansh, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, and the Leader of the Opposition in the Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge. Mr. Kharge is learned to have registered his dissent after the committee didn't accept his suggestion to appoint a member from either the Dalit, Adivasi or minority communities. The Congress leader is learned to have argued that since most complaints at the NHRC pertained to these socially disadvantaged groups, there should be at least one representative from these communities in the commission. When other members pointed out that the concerned act on the NHRC did not make any specific provisions about any group except a woman member, Mr. Kharge is learned to have pointed out that there was no specific bar in appointments. He then suggested that the panel meet again in a week's time with more names from these communities. He recorded his dissent when the committee decided to go ahead with the shortlisted names instead of looking for fresh names. For over 5 months now, the NHRC has been without a full-time head after Justice H.L. Daktu retired last December. A highly placed source said while 12 names were shortlisted for the 2 vacancies, the shortlisted candidates for the position of chairperson included 3 former Chief Justices of India, CJIs. As a sitting judge of the top court, Justice Mishra, while addressing an international conference, had described Mr. Modi as an internationally acclaimed visionary who could think globally and act locally. Policy should be clear, flexible. SC bench tells Gov that the pandemic cannot be fought in an ad hoc manner. Krishnadas Rajagopal, New Delhi. Acknowledging one's error is not a sign of weakness but that of strength, Supreme Court Judge Justice D.Y. Chandrachud told the Union government on Monday. The ability to recognize that I am wrong is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, Justice Chandrachud orally addressed Solicitor General Tushar Mehta during a virtual hearing. Justice Chandrachud was heading a 3-judge special bench hearing a suo motu case covering the various fronts of the government's COVID-19 management. The bench questioned the government's dual vaccine pricing policy between the centre and the states, the vaccination coverage in rural India, how it was almost impossible to get vaccination slots on CoWIN, the digital divide in the registration process for vaccination in Digital India, and how the dead are thrown into rivers or buried in shallow graves. The court referred to a recent video footage and pictures of two men throwing the body of a COVID-19 patient from a bridge into a river in Uttar Pradesh. I don't know whether a complaint has been filed against the news channel for sedition for publishing the photograph, Justice Chandrachud said. This comment comes amid some states allegedly registering first booking social media users and the electronic media on sedition charge. The top court banned states from taking penal action in such cases in an order on April 30. Justice Chandrachud said the government could not fight the pandemic on a day-to-day basis in an ad hoc manner. You need your policy to anticipate changes. Your policy should also be enforceable on the ground. Your policy needs to be clear-cut. If new issues come up, your policy has to be amended. But first, there should be a degree of flexibility in you. It can't be that you have made a policy and you cannot change that, Justice Chandrachud said. Mr. Mehta agreed that no policy was cast in stone. If matters change, the government will have to change, he said. Justice Chandrachud referred to how the External Affairs Minister had gone abroad for a dialogue on vaccines. It shows the seriousness of the situation, Justice Chandrachud said. At one point, Mr. Mehta expressed his concern about having to trouble Justice Chandrachud, who has just recovered from COVID-19. The interest of the nation comes first, my health comes later, Justice Chandrachud replied. Justice Chandrachud, to set the record straight with the centre, said, "We are not going to run the central government or make policy for you. This is a platform for dialogue across the spectrum. The idea is not to criticize but to strengthen the arms of the government." 1.75 crore vaccine doses are available with states, Centre. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. More than 1.75 crore COVID vaccine doses are still available with the states and union territories, the Health Ministry claimed in a release on Monday, adding that more than 2.73 lakh, 2,73,970 vaccine doses are in the pipeline and will be received by the states and union territories within the next 3 days. The central government has so far provided, both through the free of cost category and through direct state procurement category, more than 23 crore vaccine doses. 23 crores 11 lakhs 68,480 to states and union territories. Of this, the total consumption, including wastages, is 21 crores 22 lakhs 38,652 doses, as per data available at 8 am today, it said. Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan also chaired a review meeting through video conferencing with administrators from states and union territories on the progress of vaccination, on Monday. At the meeting, Mr. Bhushan noted that there is a substantial scope to accelerate the pace of vaccination further amid reports from several states of vaccine shortage. He said production was being scaled up. Thank you. International news. As births decline, China to allow couples to have third child decision comes after the two-child policy largely failed to boost birth rates. Fun time. A woman playing with her child at Wuxong shopping district in Beijing. AFP. Anant Krishnan. China will for the first time allow couples to have a third child, the country's government said on Monday, in a further relaxation of family planning rules 5 years after a two-child policy largely failed to boost birth rates. The announcement followed a meeting of the 25-member Politburo, chaired by China's President and Communist Party of China General Secretary Xi Jinping, to hear reports on major policy measures to actively address the aging of population during the 14th five-year plan period, 2021 to 2025, state media said. The change comes less than 3 weeks after the release of China's once-in-a-decade population census that painted an alarming picture of declining births. The National Bureau of Statistics said on May 11 that 12 million babies were born last year, the lowest number since 1961, a time when Mao's China was in the midst of a 4-year famine, and down from 17.86 million in 2016. The census said China's population was 1.41 billion in 2020, an increase of 72 million since the last census in 2010, reflecting a 5.38% growth in this period and a 0.53% annual growth. Forecasts say the population could peak in the next couple of years and most likely by 2025, when India will become the world's most populous country. Dire situation. Some Chinese demographers said the announcement on Monday, coming so soon after the census, suggested the situation could be more dire than the official numbers indicated. Maybe it's because the real population data is too scary, Ye Fakian, a demographer, told the South China Morning Post, SCMP. Even if they have not published it, it probably frightened the decision makers. The census recorded 264 million in the age group of 60 and over, up 5.44% since 2010 and accounting for 18.70% of the population. Those in the 15 to 59 age group were 894 million persons, down by 6.79% since 2010 and accounting for 63.35% of the population. China's workforce in the 15 to 59 age bracket peaked at 925 million in 2011, according to the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security said previously. That number was down to 894 million in this census and would drop to 700 million by 2050. Wang Wenzhen, a fellow at the Center for China and Globalization, in Beijing, told official broadcaster China Global Television Network, CGTN, following the release of the census that the aging crisis might be the biggest challenge the Chinese nation faces in the next century. It is, however, unclear if the new announcement may address the problem, at least if the past 5 years are any indication. China introduced a two-child policy in 2016, but the wide consensus is that it failed to have the desired impact. Surveys carried out by Chinese media attributed financial pressures as one main reason. A 2015 survey by the government said 70% of respondents attributed financial reasons for choosing to not have many children. An online poll on Monday of 31,000 respondents conducted by the official Xinhua news agency found 28,000 would not consider at all having 3 children, while 1,600 said they would, the SCMP reported. The poll was subsequently removed, the newspaper said. US spied on Merkel, European allies with Danish help, media NSA eavesdropped on internet cables from 2012 to 2014. Angela Merkel. Agence France Presse Copenhagen. The US spied on top politicians in Europe, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel, from 2012 to 2014 with the help of Danish intelligence, Danish and European media reported on Sunday. Danish public broadcaster Danmarks Radio, DR, said the US National Security Agency, NSA, had eavesdropped on Danish internet cables to spy on top politicians and high-ranking officials in Germany, Sweden, Norway and France. The NSA had taken advantage of a surveillance collaboration with Denmark's military intelligence unit FE to do so, it said. Denmark's defense ministry has not responded to AFP's requests for a comment. Defense Minister Trine Bramsen, who took over the defense portfolio in June 2019, was informed of the spying in August 2020. According to DR, she told the broadcaster that systematic eavesdropping of close allies is unacceptable. It was not clear whether Denmark authorized the US to use its surveillance system to spy on its neighbors. DR revealed the information following an investigation it led together with Swedish broadcaster SVT, Norway's NRK, Germany's NDR, WDR and Süddeutsche and France's Le Monde. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, then Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and then opposition leader Peer Steinbrück were among those the NSA had spied on, DR said. The NSA was able to access SMS text messages, telephone calls, and internet traffic, including searches, chats and messaging services, DR said. The spying was detailed in a secret, internal FE working group report codenamed Operation Dawnhammer, and presented to FE top management in May 2015, DR said. DR said its information came from 9 different sources who had access to classified FE information, and said their revelations were independently confirmed by several sources. Neither the FE nor its director at the time, Lars Feinstein, commented immediately on the revelations. Snowden affair. The US spying, if confirmed, was going on during and after the 2013 Snowden affair, which erupted when former NSA contractor Edward Snowden revealed thousands of classified documents exposing the vast US surveillance put in place after the 11th September 2001 attacks. Among other things, that documents showed the US government was spying on its own citizens and carrying out widespread tapping worldwide, including of Chancellor Angela Merkel's mobile phone. In November 2020, DR reported that the US had used the Danish cables to spy on Danish and European defense industries from 2012 to 2015. Pak. Talk show host slams army, ousted. Associated Press Islamabad. A Pakistani television station on Monday removed a prominent journalist as host of a popular talk show after he criticized the country's powerful military. The development comes just days after the journalist, Hamid Mir, made a fiery speech at a rally in support of a fellow reporter, Asad Ali Toor, who was beaten up by 3 unidentified men in his apartment in Islamabad. Mr. Toor later told the police his attackers claimed that they were from the ISI. Geo News TV did not comment on the changes regarding its Capital Talk program, in which Mr. Mir would debate current events in the country. Mr. Mir tweeted, "It was nothing new. I was banned twice in the past," said Mr. Mir, who had in the past been fired by Geo News. Saudi talks underway in good atmosphere, Iran, aim to reach common understanding. Agence France Presse. Iran's foreign ministry said on Monday that the Islamic Republic is continuing talks with regional rival Saudi Arabia in a good atmosphere, in the hope of reaching a common understanding. Media reports last month revealed that Iranian and Saudi officials met in Baghdad in April, their first high-level meeting since Riyadh cut diplomatic ties with Tehran in 2016. Talks are still continuing in a good atmosphere, ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh said at a press conference. "We hope these talks can achieve a common understanding between Iran and Saudi Arabia," he added. Ties between the two countries were cut in 2016 after Iranian protesters attacked Saudi diplomatic missions following the kingdom's execution of a revered Shia cleric. The talks in Baghdad, facilitated by Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi, remained secret until the Financial Times reported that a first meeting was held on April 9. Mr. Khatibzadeh confirmed the talks on May 10, saying their purpose was both bilateral and regional, but stressed it was too soon to disclose any details. De-escalation and establishing ties between two great Islamic countries in the Persian Gulf region is to the benefit of both nations, he said at the time. Many obstacles remain in bid to oust Netanyahu, says Lapid. He, however, hopes to achieve greater goal. Yair Lapid. Agence France-Presse Jerusalem. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid on Monday said many obstacles remain before a diverse coalition can be built to oust veteran Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but voiced hope it will achieve the greater goal. Mr. Lapid, a secular centrist, has been locked in talks with the right-wing nationalist Naftali Bennett on the terms of a change alliance that also hinges on an array of other parties ahead of a Wednesday midnight deadline. Former TV anchor Mr. Lapid's chances of success rose when tech millionaire Mr. Bennett, despite their ideological differences, said on Sunday he would join a national unity government, in which the two men would take turns to serve as premier. Israel's latest political turmoil comes more than 2 months after Israel's fourth inconclusive election in less than 2 years and could topple the right-wing leader known as Bibi, who has ruled for a total of 15 years. It also follows Israel's bloody 11-day conflict with Islamist group Hamas in the Palestinian enclave of Gaza that ended with a May 21 ceasefire. A viable anti-Netanyahu coalition would still need the support of other parties and lawmakers to gain a majority of 61 seats in the 120-member Knesset, Israel's legislature. But while Mr. Lapid warned of remaining hurdles, he also sought to strike a cautiously upbeat note. "We'll have to overcome them together," he told members of his Yesh Atid. "There is a future party. That's our first test, to see if we can find smart compromises in the coming days to achieve the greater goal." Mr. Netanyahu warned on Sunday that a left-wing government would be dangerous to the state of Israel. Singapore to vaccinate school children soon. Pfizer vaccine to be administered. Agence France-Presse Singapore. Singapore will start vaccinating school children against the coronavirus soon, the Prime Minister said on Monday, after officials warned that new strains were affecting youngsters more. The city-state, with a population of 5.7 million, recently tightened curbs following a slight uptick in cases, after months of reporting barely any local cases. This included closing schools amid signs that new variants, such as the one first detected in India, were affecting children in greater numbers. In a televised speech, Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong announced that school students aged 12 and over will be the next group to be inoculated. Health regulators approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds this month. It was previously only allowed for those aged 16 and above. In this latest outbreak, we have seen more cases of children getting infected in schools and tuition centers, Mr. Lee said. The children were not seriously ill, but parents are naturally worried. Therefore, we will take advantage of the June holidays to vaccinate students. The city's more than 4 lakh students can start booking vaccinations from Tuesday, with the first slots available on Thursday, officials said. After school children, officials will inoculate adults 39 years and younger. Thousands of Rohingya protest at Bhashan Char. They complain about living conditions. Agence France-Presse Dhaka. Several thousand Rohingya staged unruly protests on Monday against living conditions on a cyclone-prone island of Bangladesh, where they were moved from vast camps on the mainland, the police said. Since December, Bangladesh has shifted 18,000 out of a planned 1 lakh refugees to the low-lying silt island of Bhashan Char from the Cox's Bazar region, where around 8,50,000 people live in squalid and cramped conditions. Monday's protest involved up to 4,000 people, the police said, and coincided with an inspection visit by officials from the United Nations Refugee Agency. An international rights activist said several protesters were injured in police action. A UNHCR spokesperson said the delegation was able to meet with a large group of refugees and to listen to the various issues that they raised, which the delegation will further discuss with the Bangladesh authorities. Democrat walkout scuppers bill for Texas vote overhaul. Biden had decried it as an attempt at voter suppression. Agence France-Presse Austin. Democrats in the Texas legislature used a dramatic walkout late on Sunday to torpedo Republican plans for a restrictive voting bill that President Joe Biden had decried as voter suppression and an assault on democracy. The law would, among other changes, make mail-in voting more difficult by requiring voters to give extra information, bar local officials from sending absentee ballot applications to anyone who did not request one, and end after-hours and drive-through voting. Supporters say Senate Bill 7 is designed to make voting more secure, but critics say it aims to make it more cumbersome for ethnic minority voters, who tend to vote Democrat. Republicans came into the legislative session hell-bent on passing legislation that would rig our democracy for their team, Democrat State Representative Jessica Gonzalez tweeted after the walkout. Tonight, Texas Dems drew a line in the sand and made it clear that we will fight day and night, every tactic available to us, for your right to vote. The bill could yet make it into law. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he would call a special session to get it through the legislature. Thank you. Business news. Vaccination key to health of economy. Economic impact due to spate of lockdowns across states not likely to be as bad as last year, says CEA. While of hope, the CEA says he expects the manufacturing sector to do well this year. Murali Kumar K. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. The economic impact of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic may not be very large at this point, but curbing the pandemic through swift vaccination and strict COVID-19 protocols is imperative to revive economic activity, Chief Economic Advisor K.V. Subramanian said on Monday. Vaccination is important for the health of the people as well as the health of the economy. The economic impact is inextricably linked to the overall pandemic itself. The economy had recovered very well by March, but then the second wave has moderated the momentum, he said during a briefing on the state of the economy. While the spate of lockdowns across states is beginning to hurt the economy, the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic has peaked in early May and the restrictions imposed so far have been asynchronous and heterogeneous, and hence the decline is not likely to be as bad as last year, the CEA said. There has been an internal assessment on the costs of the restrictions. Whether or not growth, will be in double digits or single digits, there is uncertainty. Some of the scientists are talking about the possibility of a third wave. We don't know when it will be and what will be the impact. It would be speculative to tell you exact numbers, Mr. Subramanian said, terming the Economic Survey and Budget's GDP growth estimates for 2021 to 22, 11% and about 10.5%, respectively, as conservative. Immense uncertainty. The caveat with everything related to the pandemic is that estimates are subject to immense uncertainty given that the trajectory of the pandemic has been hard to predict even for epidemiologists, Mr. Subramanian pointed out. He said he expected manufacturing to do well this year, and non-contact intensive services will also see an enhanced demand due to the feedback effects from manufacturing. For contact-sensitive services sectors to come back, will depend on the path of the vaccination itself, he said. Impact of restrictions. Referring to the moderation in several indicators over the past month, the chief economic advisor said, clearly, the restrictions imposed by the states have had some impact, but as the wave seems to be on the decline, we do anticipate that these restrictions will progressively reduce and later be removed, which may help in bringing back economic activity. Fiscal deficit narrower than forecast at 9.2%. Customs, excise receipts lift revenue. Special correspondent, New Delhi. India recorded a fiscal deficit of 9.2% of GDP in 2020-21, narrower than the revised estimate of 9.5%, as per data from the Controller General of Accounts, CGA, and official GDP figures released on Monday. Total revenue receipts were about 88,000 rupees crore higher than estimated, driven largely by higher excise and customs collections, while total expenditure was 61,000 rupees crore more than the revised estimate, according to CARE Ratings chief economist Madan Sabnavis. The CGA projected the revenue deficit at 7.42% of GDP, which had been assumed at 194 rupees and 82 paise lakh crore in the Union Budget. Budget 2020-21, presented before the COVID-19 lockdowns, had set a fiscal deficit target of 3.5% of GDP. The slightly better than expected fiscal performance doesn't necessarily bode well for this year's fiscal pressures. The Reserve Bank of India's significantly higher than anticipated dividend of Rupee 99,000 odd crore notwithstanding, opine economists. The government has set a target to reduce the fiscal deficit this year to 6.8%. Mr. Sabnavis pointed out that the higher than estimated expenditure in 2020-21 was actually driven by higher revenue expenditure of 75,000 rupees crore. Interestingly, capex was cut by 14,000 rupees crore. Expenditure control will be important for floor Y22 as pressures will be there on tax revenue due to lockdowns, while non-tax receipts will be higher due to RBI transfer of 99,000 rupees crore this year, he said. ICRA chief economist Aditya Nair attributed the spurt in revenue spending to the release of food subsidies, but higher than anticipated tax revenues helped curtail the deficit to Rupee 18.2 lakh crore from the estimated Rupee 18.5 lakh crore. Relief for bond market. This will come as a relief to the bond market. At this stage, there is a modest risk that the GOI's fiscal deficit in floor Y22 will be higher than budgeted, Rupee 15.1 lakh crore, especially on account of shortfalls in disinvestment receipts, and higher than budgeted expenditure. Accordingly, the space for a fiscal stimulus appears to be limited and would need to be carefully targeted, she said. The second wave of COVID-19, Ms. Nair said, could delay some marquee disinvestment plans, posing the biggest risk to budgeted receipts this year. While tax receipts would be affected due to the anticipation of a prolonged second wave impact on sentiment, the centre may have to keep spending to prop up demand via a combination of free food grains, cash transfers and higher MNREGA outlays, she said. An eventual cut in cesses on fuels, which would dampen excise collections, can't be ruled out, given record high retail fuel prices, she said, adding that the centre would also need to hasten vaccine availability. Sharp deterioration in overall business confidence. FICCI survey respondents seek fiscal package to spur demand. Special correspondent, New Delhi. The worsening conditions and muted near-term expectations due to the second wave of COVID-19 have led to a sharp deterioration in overall business confidence among companies, a survey by the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, FICCI, shows. Participating firms in the Business Confidence Survey unanimously felt that the government must, first and foremost, focus on controlling COVID cases, and that only a massive vaccination drive could decouple India's economy from another pandemic-induced shock. Also, they stressed on the need for another fiscal package, focused on addressing the demand side, along with employment-based incentives to avert any job losses. The overall business confidence index nosedived to 51.5 after reporting a decadal high value of 74.2 in the previous round of the survey released in March 2021, the industry body said. About 70% participants reported weak demand conditions as a bothering factor in the current survey compared with 56% in the previous round. The corresponding number last year was 77%. With household income being severely impacted and past savings already drawn down during the first wave of infections, demand conditions are expected to remain weak for longer this time around. It added that since a much larger proportion of the population has been impacted in the current wave, there had been permanent impairment to income for many households which had faced job losses or had lost breadwinners to COVID-19. Chip supply shortages could last several years. WFH triggered explosive growth. Intel. Reuters Taipei. Intel Corp's CEO said on Monday it could take several years for a global shortage of semiconductors to be resolved, a problem that has shuttered some auto production lines and is also being felt in other areas, including consumer electronics. Pat Gelsinger told a virtual session of the Computex trade show in Taipei that the work and study from home trend during the COVID-19 pandemic had led to a cycle of explosive growth in semiconductors that has placed huge strain on global supply chains. But while the industry has taken steps to address near-term constraints, it could still take a couple of years for the ecosystem to address shortages of foundry capacity, substrates and components. Intel announced a $20 billion plan in March to expand its advanced chip manufacturing capacity, building 2 factories in Arizona and opening its plants to outside customers. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as a podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Gemma Bharti. To download news and editorials in MP3, follow us on Telegram, Virtual School. The link is provided in the description below.